The movie begins with the uneventful life of a countryside man named Arthur Dent. However, Dent's morning routine gets cut short when his house begins to rumble. He goes out of his home to see many bulldozers and trucks surrounding his land. Confused and frustrated, Dent lies in front of one of the bulldozers to stop them from demolishing his house. Not long after, he gets into an argument when one of the engineers asks him to move away. At the same time, Ford Prefect, Dent's friend, arrives at the scene, pushing a cart filled with alcohol and beer. When he notices the machines threatening to destroy Dent's house, he quickly uses the beer and alcohol he brought as a distraction. When they reach a pub, Prefect starts to act strangely, ordering too many beers and talking about the end of times. Seeing Dent's confusion, Prefect sternly reveals that he's not actually human, but is an alien from a small planet somewhere in Betelgeuse. Despite the absurdity of his friend's words, Dent remembers the first time they met, how he saved Prefect from getting run over, and slowly considers Prefect's words accurate. While Prefect tells Dent it's his turn to save his Earthling friend, Dent visibly becomes upset. Dent explains why he's upset and shows Prefect a picture of Tricia McMillan, a woman he met at a party. He talks about her down-to-earth personality and intellectual humor. However, Dent remembers refusing when she asked him to go to Madagascar with her. He recalls with a sad heart that a man in a red cloak, Zaphod Beeblebrox, had enticed her and taken her away right after his Madagascar rejection. As Prefect points out that they have 2 more minutes until the world ends, Dent suddenly hears the sound of demolition and quickly runs to his house. As he takes in the large rubble of what once was his house, Dent fails to notice the workers running away as a giant spaceship approaches. Upon arrival, Prefect hands a towel to Dent and informs him that the ship belongs to a Vogan constructor fleet. As he holds his friend tight, Prefect lifts his thumb to teleport them into the boat. At the same time, a Vogan from the ship uses a loudspeaker to send a message across the entire world. It announces that there have been plans to build a hyperspace expressway in the galaxy. The alien explains that they will have to destroy Earth to construct the expressway successfully. Without much delay, the alien gives the order to demolish Earth. As Prefect and Dent teleport into one of the spaceships, millions of Vogan spaceships surrounding the Earth obliterate the planet in unison. As Dent reads through The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, also known as one of the most famous and successful books ever published through the corporations of Ursa Minor, he comes to terms with the fact that Prefect isn't human. Dent also acknowledges his friend's work in making The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Homesick, Dent asks Prefect to help him go back to Earth. When Prefect tells him that Earth got blown up, he hugs Dent. After pacing around the room, Prefect hands Dent a towel and tells him that towels are essential in the universe. As Prefect tells him they need to find a way to get out of the ship, Dent asks about Vogans. When he uses the interactive book guide, he discovers that Vogans are unpleasant, rule-abiding, bitter aliens. The guide also adds that Vogans are strict and bad-tempered and need better poetry skills. Unfortunately, in the ship's control room, one of the Vogans sees Prefect and Dent through CCTV cameras. When it alerts the other Vogans, it sends a message to Prefect and Dent through a built-in speaker. Knowing that Dent can't understand an alien language, Prefect forces a fish-like alien into Dent's ear. He explains to Dent that the fish acts as a translator so that he can understand them. When the Vogans catch the Dew, they take them to 2 platforms. As Jeltz, the Vogan in authority, gets notified, he approaches the prisoners with a small book. Suddenly, he starts reading Vogan poetry. Considering that Vogan poetry is regarded as the 3rd worst kind of poetry in the universe, Prefect cringes at the creature's narration. When Jeltz stops reading, he threatens to throw Prefect and Dent out of the ship if they don't give their opinions about his poem. Despite his stuttering, Dent explains why he thinks that Jeltz's poem is a good one. However, Jeltz gets offended by the explanation and unreasonably orders that the Dew gets thrown out of the ship. With a low chance of surviving or getting saved, the 2 float around in space for a few moments. Miraculously, the duodas get saved, somehow ending up in the form of sofas. After briefly panicking about their new state, they revert to their human figures. In another part of the ship, McMillan fiddles with the controls as she watches the news. The anchorwoman talks about the infamous stolen ship, the Heart of Gold, which McMillan is steering. The reporter adds that President Beeblebrox, who had won against a running opponent named Humakavula, stole the boat. As Beeblebrox continues watching the news, McMillan turns it off and tells him about the hitchhikers that the ship picked up. She explains that when they put the ship into improbability drive, the ship managed to pick up 2 hitchhikers. After reminding McMillan that the entire Galaxy police force is after them for stealing the ship, Beeblebrox picks up a gun and makes his way to Dent and Prefect. However, Macmillan stops him and sends their robot, Marvin, instead. Built with a humanely depressed personality, Marvin trudges along to get Prefect and Dent. Meanwhile, on Vogosphere, the Vogons' home planet, the commander dispatches dozens of Vogon ships into hyperspace to retrieve the Heart of Gold with the president. Depressed as usual, Marvin grudgingly leads the duo to the main room in the Heart of Gold. When they arrive, Beeblebrox jumps out and threatens them with a gun. However, after a few moments, Beeblebrox and Prefect greet each other with a hug when they recognize each other. Dent is at a loss for words as he remembers Beeblebrox from the costume party he attended. When Macmillan enters the scene, Beeblebrox tries to pull her away from Dent. However, when Macmillan excuses herself, she pulls Dent aside to catch up with him. After a small awkward talk, Beeblebrox jumps into the conversation and scares Dent when he reveals another head from his neck. Suddenly, the ship's alarms go off when hundreds of Vogon spaceships appear out of the blue. Beeblebrox tells the ship to go into hyperspace as the team becomes frantic. As the group settles down, Beeblebrox approaches Dent and reveals that it was his fault that Earth got demolished. He then threatens Dent to keep his mouth shut and not tell Macmillan. After that, Dent moves on to catch up with Macmillan in the ship's kitchen. When he bitterly recalls the night they met, he tries to tell her about Beeblebrox's secret, but she refuses before she hears it. They're interrupted when Beeblebrox calls everyone to the main room. Then he shows them a video about the most incredible supercomputer ever built, named Deep Thought. The video explains that they made the Deep Thought to answer life's ultimate question. However, Deep Thought had responded vaguely, telling its creators that life's ultimate question is still unknown. So it promised to build its supercomputer to find life's ultimate question. However, the video abruptly ends before Deep Thought can name its creation. Beeblebrox explains that he wants to find life's ultimate question for fame and money. Shortly after that, Beeblebrox lets the ship go into Improbability Drive, a shortcut allowing you to be teleported to a random location in the cosmos while perhaps being shapeshifted into another form. As the ship teleports, it, along with the team, transforms into forms of knitted wool. After a few seconds, everything reverts to normal as the ship nears a planet when the ship informs the crew of the planet's name, Viltfotl 6, where Kavula, Beeblebrox's rival, resides. Intent on meeting his enemy, Beeblebrox tells the ship to land. As the team sets out to find Kavula, they meet the citizens of Viltfotl 6, the Jatravardids, small blue creatures with more than 50 arms. Famously known for their vast invention of aerosol cans, the Jatravardids believe that the universe was sneezed out of the nose of a being called the Great Green Arkelsusher. They eventually find Kavula preaching about the coming of the Great White Handkerchief. Later on, Beeblebrox confronts him but, unfortunately, gets held up by Kavula's men. Seeing her boyfriend in danger, Macmillan tells Kavula about their mission to go to Magrathea. Surprised, Kavula reveals that he coincidentally has the coordinates to Magrathea. They eventually settle on a deal where the team will have to retrieve a gun from Magrathea and give it to Kavula. Kavula takes one of Beeblebrox's heads to ensure that the team will return. As the team takes the gem and makes their way to the Heart of Gold, dozens of Vogons show up. When a series of laser shots are released, the team quickly regathers and hides behind a wall. To scare off the Vogons, Macmillan holds up an aerosol can against the president, threatening to kill him. As she and the group slowly make their way through the crowd of aliens, she, unfortunately, gets taken away. When the rest of the group returns to the ship, they hop on an emergency pod to rescue Macmillan. After plummeting their ship on Vogosphere, Prefect puts a thinking cap on Beeblebrox to compensate for losing one of his heads. As they make their way to Vogon City in the distance, swatters suddenly pop up from the ground, hitting them whenever they think of an idea. They quickly run for it, hiding behind a wall when they reach the city. While the team tries to release Macmillan through lengthy paperwork, Macmillan gets interrogated by Vogons. She finds out later that Beeblebrox is the one who gave the order to demolish Earth. As punishment for kidnapping the president, the sentence is they will feed her to the Budbladder beast of Troll. After filling out another form for a presidential prisoner release, the Register approves the signed papers. It's sent just in time to save Macmillan from being fed to the beast. When she gets released, she angrily confronts Beeblebrox for having approved of Earth's destruction. Furthermore, she also argues with Dent when she realizes that Dent is holding information from her. Later, when they return to the Heart of Gold, Macmillan and Dent make amends as Beeblebrox uses Kavula's coordinates to enable the ship's improbability drive to Magrathea. However, when they near the planet, they receive a pre-recorded hologram message that the planet has been temporarily closed. Despite the message, Beeblebrox orders the ship to land. Suddenly, they receive another hologram warning that they sent 2 missiles to destroy their ship. The team quickly navigates through space, twisting and turning to avoid the missiles. As Dent tries to press the improbability drive, Macmillan and Beeblebrox warn him, explaining that it could be disastrous. Despite their warnings, Dent presses the improbability drive. After a brief period of turbulence, the team notices that one of the missiles transforms into a bowl of petunias. In contrast, the other transforms into a sperm whale. When they finally land, the group trudges through the thick, snowy ground to discover 3 portals, one leading to Deep Thought. When Beeblebrox fiddles with one of the portals, it suddenly turns on. An argument quickly arises about the possibility of danger if they choose the wrong portal. Without words, Macmillan breaks the fight by jumping into the portal, consequently getting teleported quickly after. Prefect and Beeblebrox follow shortly after, leaving Marvin and Dent. After a small pep talk with himself, Dent builds up the courage to jump into the portal. However, the portal ends up closing just before he can teleport. Hopeless and alone with a depressed robot, Dent ponders his misfortune of being stranded on another planet. Not long after that, a strange man appears. He introduces himself as Slarta Bartfast and tells Dent that the rest of his group is safe. He then teleports Dent to a room filled with miniature worlds. As he explains that it's a part of his job to create worlds and planets, he cautiously tells Dent that there has been a mix-up about Earth's demolition. As Slarta Bartfast shows in his workplace called the factory floor, the rest of Dent's gang teleports to the area where Deep Thought is. Strangely enough, they see Deep Thought watching a television, forever locked in its nonchalant pose. When Beeblebrox asks the computer the most important question in life, Deep Thought says that the computer it built to answer the question was on Earth that just blew up. Back on the factory floor, Slarta Bartfast shows Dent a backup planet Earth called Earth Mark U. At the same time, Macmillan and the rest of the group discover Cavula's specified gun inside Deep Thought's structure called the Point of View gun. Initially created for homemakers to use on their husbands, the Point of View gun enables the person getting shot to acquire the mindset of the person holding the gun. Considering that it was originally intended to be used on men, this makes women immune to its effects. After Prefect takes a few tries at shooting Beeblebrox, Macmillan does the same to make Beeblebrox understand why she's furious at him. However, the more she shoots Beeblebrox, the more she hears her thoughts coming out of his mouth. After that, Macmillan realizes that life is meaningless because of being alone and uses many men to try to fill the emotional hole in her heart. Consequently, she realizes Dent is the only man who fully understands her. Meanwhile, in the factory floor, Slarta Bartfast reveals that the Earth is paid for and run by mice. Seeing Dent's disbelief, he adds that the mice on Earth have been experimenting on humans in their computer program. After some time flying across oceans and forests, they arrive at a replica of Dent's house in the countryside. Speechless, Dent runs inside to find Prefect, Macmillan, and Beeblebrox sitting around an overfilled food table. As Dent picks up a cup of tea, he surprisingly gets greeted by 2 talking mice. While his group explains how they got there, the mice tell him to sit and drink. Then, the mice talk about how long they've observed humans to find life's ultimate question. Dent nods to every word until they tell him they'll need his physical brain. Suddenly, the mice enable restraints on him, ready to remove his brain. Then, he notices that his entire team has fallen asleep due to something the mice had put on their food. Fortunately, he manages to distract the mice using reflective wise questions. Then, he starts rambling about how much fun he's had for the past week compared to his entire life. Almost reflectively, he begins to express his long-hidden question about his feelings for Macmillan. Unfortunately, the mice, not pitying Dent's love life, continue their procedure. Luckily, he manages to break free from the restraints. Smashing the mice he discovered were the people who created Deep Thought. Just as his team starts coming out of their sleep-like trance, the house begins to shake. They all see hundreds of Vogons lined up, guns in hand. As if to break the tension, Marvin comes out of the Vogon crowd, reminding the team that they left him in Vogosphere. When one of the Vogons declares their intention to rescue the president from the kidnappers, the Vogons open fire. The team quickly retreats inside Dent's RV, dropping the Point of View gun. Unfortunately, Marvin gets hit in the head by one of the laser shots. As Prefect fights off a few Vogons heading towards them, Marvin returns to life. He picks up the Point of View gun and successfully shoots the whole crowd of Vogons, consequently rendering them depressed and hopeless. When Slartibartfast's workers dispose of the Vogons, Slartibartfast tells Dent that the crew can quickly rebuild his damaged property. He then asks Dent if there's anything he wants to go from his property. Dent points to himself, intending to leave his quiet life for adventure with Macmillan. The movie ends with the teen riding the Heart of Gold to a restaurant at the end of the universe while life goes on in Earth Mark II.